I mean, I don't think there was a lot of thought that was put into this. We weren't really crafting it as much as we were just throw that in there, do this, do that.
Is that how that Jimi Hendrix? Is that how that ended up in there?
Yeah, that shouldn't even be on the record, but that's just. I think that's the tail end of us recording the song.
Gotcha.
And then I think E just kept it going, and we just started playing.
So E was the producer on the Enemy.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think Jim Monroe might have been involved a bit, because I remember going in when Farside recorded. I remember that I knew him, or I knew who he was, but I don't remember for sure.
Does do you think? Let's say if you guys start writing the material like Black and like that, like, well, because Black came out on the bus comp, but then there was that, like, was Black on that 7-inch? Was it like that 2-song 7-inch with that kind of like odd, kind of cool looking cover? Like, do you think the band maybe would have stayed together longer if you would have started writing music like that earlier, or no?
Oh no! Those, I mean, the song Black was fairly old.
Oh wow, really?
It never had words until we went in and put it onto the 7-inch. It was always it was like the last year and a half. That was the song that we opened with. That was sort of like our intro bust. And
That's a great opener. Like that really yeah.
Well, again, I mean, in keeping with tradition, we thought that it was great because we thought that like the youth crew kids would really just bomb on it because it's very slow. It's we thought it sounded like sort of a cross between the Melvins and Godflesh and maybe Soundgarden, which that the youth of today kids are, at least we thought would probably be like, what is this hippie shit? But
So then moving a little forward, how?
But I'm so
yeah. No, please.
Headfirst would have broken up no matter what.
Okay.
Mike and Aaron were definitely going in this direction. John wanted to do what he eventually did with Downer. He wanted to do like something that was tuned down, that was heavy, that was a little bit grumpier sounding. And Mike and Aaron were. I don't think they wanted to be a grunge band. I mean, you listen to that first Smile record, it sounds like a grunge band, but they were really listening to a lot of like old Kinks and the Sonics and like 60s garage stuff, and they wanted to do something like that.
It's interesting how you say that, because like they were listening to that, and it seemed like that they sort of eventually evolved into that, but it took them a while. Like they just sort of, yeah, it just took them a little. They didn't start off sounding like that to me.
Smile was around for a long time
right.
before that first record came out, and they played so many shows.
Yep. Yeah.
And it was always to like a very small crowd, so they had a lot of time to kind of really hone their craft and find their sound. Which the early stuff, it was very. I mean, that was when you remember Rob Gonzalez?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was when he was playing second guitar.
Yep.
And he was writing like half the stuff, and that dude is just. He's all about like Neil Young and mid '60s stuff.
I always thought it was odd.
It was really cool.
I always thought it was involved that it was odd that he lived with you guys. This is Rob Gonzalez, lived with you guys, was around you guys, and then moved away. And like, I'm like, why isn't that guy doing something? Because he seemed to be one of those guys like that would sort of be brought out with you guys, and then okay, now we're going to see what all of these guys are going to do as a band, or like if he was still in Smile or whatever.
Yeah. It was. I was really sad when Rob moved, because he's. I mean, you met him, you knew him. I mean, just one of the nicest guys.
Made great guacamole.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
I mean, it was amazing.
Yeah.
But so now. How do you get into 411? Because in my mind, I'm a young kid hanging out with Dan, and I'm just imagining Dan kind of walking around the scene, grabbing people, and we're going to do a band. Which, how did it happen?
The way I remember it was, I know that the original idea before we had a name or anything like that was it was going to be more of like a neurosis kind of thing. We were aiming to be kind of heavy and kind of spooky.
That's when Vadim was playing drums before Mario.
When
right?
Vadim was playing drums, yeah. And so it was, I think we had this idea that it was going to be a little droning, slower pace, and I was hoping that Dan was going to that the O'Mahony that was going to be in the band would be the Thought Crusade version. When I mean, like when he recorded that record, I mean, his voice was low. He had that low, like it was great.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't working. Josh and I weren't especially good at writing metal riffs, and so the way I remember was I had recorded some. I was in like a real heavy government issue phase, and I'd recorded a few things on the 4-track, no vocals or anything, just guitar, bass, and drums. And Dan heard it, and I don't remember when or how, but I remember very clearly. He was like, "This is what we need to be doing," and so we just kind of changed direction around that, and so we went in and recorded.
This is the 7-inch?
Before, yeah, the 7-inch, before we really even practiced. Because the first 7-inch is
it's just you. It's just you. Is it you doing everything and Dan, or is it you, Josh, and Dan?
No, I think Josh played on it. But yeah, I played drums and guitar as well.
Has anyone ever told you that on the back of that record you look like the guy from the North Shore?
I don't know what the North Shore is.
It's a 80s movie about this guy that goes and like learns to surf very, very quickly because he's not very good. And see it just because when I first met you, I was like, that's not the same guy. Because you looked so.
Was it the blonde hair?
Right, well, yeah, it was just so different. And your hair was like here, and it just, if you look at the back cover, I don't think I've ever told you that. But yeah, my first thought was, dude, he looks like Rick Kane. That's the character from the North Shore. Yeah, you look like him.
You know the most obscure movies.
So you go in and you record this record. To me, those two songs sound effortless. Like literally, like just like, I don't want to say lightning in a bottle because there's other songs you did on the 12-inch that sound that way. Was it as flawless in execution as it seems?
I mean, I think we recorded it really, really quickly. I want to say it was a one-day thing. I might be wrong, but I feel like it was really quick. And the LP was fairly quick as well. I'm a week, 2 weeks, maybe. But yeah, I mean, it was 2 songs, so it wasn't all that hard. And the difficult part, I think, was the drums. Because at that point, I think I'd only really played the drum part a few times just so I could record on the 4-track. So going into a studio was a little bit different. But I remember the guitar and bass and Dan's vocals being pretty quick.
So you guys literally hadn't really practiced. It was we're gonna go in and was that recorded at West Beach too? Or
I think it was, yeah.
Okay.
I think, yeah.
Well, because the recording on that is also really, like, it sounds awesome. I think. I mean, it sounds like great.
I like that recording more than I like the recording for the LP. I'm not the sound on the LP. I was never really particularly happy with.
Do you think there may be any correlation with you and maybe doing things quicker in the studio that you end up liking them more because there's less time to kind of critique and be hyper focused on it and just it's like boom, this is it. It just comes out.
I mean, maybe I think I think with 401 they were quick because especially when we recorded the LP, we had practiced a lot, And so we were pretty well oiled by then. But I also think there was a bit of like a financial aspect to it. Like I think we knew who was paying for it. I mean, it was Dan was covering it. I think ultimately Kane or whoever ran all of those, the mastermind behind all these labels really forked over the money or whatever. I don't know.
And that's Cargo. That's like Cargo. Who Dan kind of had, I guess, what you would now call a P&D deal with them. Like he would bring them stuff and they would release it.
Right, and then it would be on Dan's imprint. Or
right.
I mean, I think Nemesis kind of worked the same way, and Headhunter,
but not Ringside.
Not Ringside, not Ringside, not Jester. Exactly. Only independently. So I think
or Kamita. Sorry. I don't. Yeah. Sorry. You and I have way too big of a history together. We know way too much about each other. But yeah. I'm sorry. Please.
Anyway, I think we were very conscious of the fact that we didn't want to spend a lot of time because it was, mime is money.
Right. Now, on that record, is there, like, when you talk about the sound of it, to me, wait, actually, no, I know what I wanted to ask. Is it fair to say, because I want to say that I remember this, that you guys had actually recorded that record before you ever played live? I may have the dates wrong on that.
I want to say that's true, but I'm thinking it's not. I'm thinking we put the 7-inch out before we played live, but I think we played a bunch of shows before the LP came out. I could be wrong. I don't really remember.
Is it in any way sort of a, I don't know, I guess like a, I don't know if point of pride is the right word, but is it any way like the stuff that you guys were singing about and playing about, and the stuff, ever since I've known you, that you've always sort of, it's not like you go around preaching, but I'm saying if anyone talks to you, you're going to tell them your politics, you're going to tell them how you feel. Is it kind of a point of pride for you that like the things that you stood for then and that are still talked about today, like it's like that stuff is, and I mean by that stuff I mean those songs are just as relevant. Is that in any way kind of like, wow, it was great to be on the right, or on the right track, or to be talking about that? Or is it more like, yeah, it's great that we did that, but shit, we're still talking about the same, like, why do we still have these problems? That was a very odd question, and I apologize.
No. I know exactly what you're asking. It's all of that. On the one hand, it's, I like to look at current state of the country and see that, anyone that wants to marry whoever it is that they're in love with can do it. That's great. And, I like the idea that I was on the right side of history with that. But it is a bummer that there's still plenty of people that have an issue with that, with, Tom and Steve getting married.
Right.
Like it really, it messes up their life somehow. So they have to stick their nose into it, and then Jesus gets involved, and, and all of this, and that part's still kind of a bummer.
Which you guys, for being who you guys are, within that have a song called Our Father, which is in my opinion, I don't look at that as like an assault on organized religion. It's more of an assault on people practicing. Like you're not coming down on the idea of God. You're coming down on more on the idea of people who espouse this belief in God and then talk about the way to act, and then can act completely the opposite of that way.
I mean, I think you'd have to ask Dan that and make sure that the audio is recording. But I kind of always saw it as sort of a, down with God kind of thing.
No, that's that. I'm telling you,
Which
no,
was
this
fine
is
with
great.
me.
Right. Oh yeah, no, trust me. I didn't think you'd ever. I don't think you would ever take Dan to task for that. No, but you know what? That's the beauty of this whole thing is like I can listen to it and I like kind of take it and I filter it in my brain, and then you, I mean, you're the guy that created it, so you have your, obvious feelings, and I just think, I just think 411, it's really really interesting because like you guys got, at least to me, you guys got really really big, and it almost seems to me that that wasn't very important to you guys. Am I wrong on that? Am I like, it just seems like it wasn't like you guys walked around and felt good or bad whether you guys were big or small or whatever. It was more about, we just want to play and we're making this music and this is who we are. Like, it never seemed, you never carried an air about yourself like, wow, well, we're the biggest band in the scene right now, even though for that time you guys were.
So here's a story kind of related to that. At some point, after the first tour that we went on, it was still summer. We had gone on tour. That the album was out. We had gone on tour. We had come home, and then I think we played a couple other shows. And they were, there were people there. I don't know if there was a lot of people, but there were people there, and they were into it, and it was great. Everybody was having a good time. And around that time, I distinctly remember going to Zed Records with my friend Sherry. And, I stood around talking with Frank a little bit, and I think Caton was there, and we talked with Caton for a little bit, and I looked at some records and bought a 7-inch or whatever, and then Sherry and I left, and I think we went next door to the Mexican restaurant. And she said, that was really weird. And I was like, what was weird? And she's like, there were so many people in there that were just like staring at you and like pointing at you and like talking like that's the guy from blah blah blah. And I'm like, what? Like, and so I think the answer to your question is, at least I was completely oblivious.
Even though there was like hundreds of people like at the show, like going off, like you guys were one of those bands that like pits could happen, but no one was getting hurt. Everyone was being respectful. Like, it was kind of around that time. But Dan didn't ever have to say anything like, hey, everyone, take care of yourselves and don't. Like, so you didn't think anything, or were you just thinking, well, we're playing a show, there's a lot of bands on the show, people have come to the show, and they just happen to be going off for us right now because we're playing?
Yeah. I mean, it was a hardcore show. It's just, I just assumed that's what people did. I've never been, honestly, I've never understood like stage diving and circle pit and all that stuff. I've always been the guy that stands either on the side of the stage or in the back with his fingers in his ears, because you can hear better because it clarifies the sound, and just stands there and pays attention.
And you would literally stand like a statue. I remember seeing you, and I remember wondering, like, okay, aren't his arms getting tired? And doesn't that hurt to have your fingers in your ear for 40 minutes or whatever? It never bothered you.
Well, I mean, it wasn't always comfortable, but, I mean, I went to shows. If it was a band that I liked, I really wanted to pay attention to them. I wanted to see what the drummer was doing. I wanted to see what the bass player was doing. I don't think there's ever been a band that I've gone to see where I've just, fucking party and just start moshing or whatever. And I've never understood that. It doesn't. And there was always a part of me that thought, why don't you guys just fucking settle down and pay attention?
Right.
Just check out what we're doing. But instead it was a bunch of shirtless dudes running around slamming into each other. I just assumed that most of the people that were at these shows, it wouldn't have mattered who was on stage. If it's the headlining band, that's the cue to go bananas. And it doesn't matter who it is. You know, this is just it's I'm gonna blow off steam. I'm gonna, you know, punch guys, whatever it is. So I don't I always view that as just like this is what happens when the headlining band plays. It's not necessarily like a sign of appreciation or anything like that. I mean, I could have been wrong, but that's how I always interpreted